you think about if you were to buy yourself a pair of Sundaras and an MT602 or 604, and obviously that means a different cable. If you're buying the 604, you have to buy the cable, but do that, connect it up to an E50, you've got yourself a nuts level system for, well, we're not even hitting $1,000.
Hey, I'm Randy. I'm the Chief Audio Man. Today we're joined by Lachlan over at Passion for Sound. You're out of Melbourne, Australia,
Yep,
correct?
that's it.
Yeah, and it's like 5 a.m. over there right now.
It's coming up on 6, just gone past 6 a.m.
You look oddly awake and happy. And is that something you wake up like at 4 a.m. every morning? Or
No,
something?
God, no. This was a stretch. We've got a 19-month-old, so sleep's at a premium these days.
So I know some of my viewers know you, Passion for Sound, but just kind of give the elevator speech on what you do over there.
Sure. So essentially it's headphone-based reviews is probably the first thing to say. So all my content's based around headphone listening. I've got experience with speakers, but it's kind of in the past these days. So it's really reviews, interviews, information pieces, all based around anything to do with listening to music, but with a headphone-based kind of angle, if you like. So DACs, amps, streamers, not so much streamers, but I'm getting into them more. Cables, which is always a contentious topic for some. So I like to dabble in that stuff, even though I know some people get triggered by it. It's an area I find fascinating to try to understand. Do they make a difference? How much of a difference? Why? All that sort of stuff. So you kind of anything that can relate to listening to music through headphones ultimately, and obviously the headphones themselves.
Yeah. Well, how did you get, what was the genesis where you're like, I'm starting a YouTube channel?
Where this began was prior to my career in learning. I decided I wanted to work in the audio field if possible, in terms of retail and manufacturing. And so I worked as a long sorted story behind that, I came out of uni, I'd done speech pathology or speech therapy as my course. Decided halfway through I didn't want to work in the public health system because I didn't like how the system was set up and it was going to drive me insane. And so I thought, what else can I do with these skills? I thought, what if I take it into teaching normal people how to communicate better rather than working with people with disabilities around communication? That's where I thought, well, I'll get into a business sort of area or work in companies and I'll move into training. I started off, my first kind of major job was with Bang & Olufsen, actually here in Australia.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, so I was working as product and training manager here at B&O in Australia when they had a local arm. They then got bought out by B&O Central from Denmark. And so a lot of the roles there were redundant, left there, bounced around a little bit and ended up at Pioneer Electronics for a while. Strangely, with Pioneer, I was on the video side, not the audio side, but still kind of tapped in a bit. And somewhere in that period, I started writing a blog. So I ran a blog called Passion for Sound for 12 to 15 years before I started before I started the channel. And the blog got zero traffic. So, only this niche, tiny little bunch of enthusiasts. And so I was very active on Headphone in those days as well. So on Headphone, I'm known as Laqua, which is Loquah. I'm not as active anymore as I was. I do dip in there occasionally. But the end result of it was I thought, this written blog thing's not going anywhere fast. Let's start a YouTube channel and see. And that was the beginning of it a couple of years back.
Okay, well, very cool. So I assume that was just stuff. I know for me, it was just reviewing stuff that I already had or I purchased. Is that something you still do, or are you having companies send you stuff now?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It started off very much stuff I had, stuff I wanted to get my hands on, that therefore I would buy and try out. But obviously the aim over time, because it was something I wanted to build, was to start forming relationships with suppliers and retailers and whatnot. And that's gone pretty well for the most part. These days, it's a bit of a mix. I get sent some stuff from some companies, other stuff I buy. Thankfully, most of the time now I can buy stuff at a reduced price. So often it's from the distributors. So they're selling kind of at the price they would sell to the retailer. So I'm not having to fork out for the full price because, as a part-time gig, they're just, I think the channel's maybe just breaking even now, maybe just after 2 years. But having said that, everything that it comes in tends to go out again on a new bit of gear. So yeah, it's a mixed bag of whether it's given or purchased, but generally the more expensive stuff, which I do like to try to get to because there's a lot of interest from people that, it's a big purchase. People can't get their hands on it easily without forking out their own cash. So I do try to get to the more expensive stuff. We were talking just before we pressed record about the Elites behind me here. That was a purchase because I'm like, I have to own a pair of them. They're great. And so it was something that I thought people are going to want to know this before they spend their money. I want a pair. I think they're fantastic. I'm happy to buy them and take the plunge. So yeah, mixed bag would be the answer there.
One of my patrons actually introduced me to your channel, but then it was the Poseidon review. So I did my review, and then I always get curious, and then I'll watch other people's reviews after I've done mine. And I watched yours, and I'm like, oh, yep. And I think we came out with a lot of the same conclusions. Obviously, you were much more articulate with yours, and
yours had more gags, though. I liked it.
Well, your stuff looked a lot better than mine, of course, but yeah, I like that headphone. It was really kind of warm, but yet still exciting at the same time. I liked it. I wish it was built just a titch better, but I really like it.
I agree. I'm not a fan of the wood inserts down the side of the, like, probably because it's glossy. I don't know. It looks like fake wood on the sides. And little things like that, and the headband contouring and the lumpiness of it up the top, little things like that didn't sit particularly well with me from a design aesthetic. But I think, like you said, it's a fun headphone. I think ultimately I've landed on liking the color scheme better than the Zeus. I've got both of them here, and I think I like the more dark, a bit more subtle kind of look of the Poseidon. But yeah, I agree. I think it's a cool headphone. It's very much a unique tuning that some are going to love and some aren't going to be a fan of, but I think it's cool.
So give me a few of your headphones. Like, let's go maybe less than 500 and then go above 500. A few headphones that you really like, you think are good value.
All right. So some of it's going to depend on use case, and I haven't reviewed these yet, but what I'm wearing now I think is cool. This is the new Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X, the open model.
Okay.
I'm really impressed with what they've done here. I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Beyer for a while in terms of I really like the sound, except for that treble peak that they seem determined to insert in every single headphone.
Where is that? Like, what frequency is that
at? Around 8 to 10K, I think it normally sits. Closer to 10, actually, I think, on the Beyers. And it produces this sense when you first listen to it. It's this combination of, wow,
they're awesome.
Yeah, wow, they're bright, but wow, that's cool. I can hear all these details I never heard before. But to me, it's not because they've got more detail. They're just shoving it down your throat more or down your ear hole.
Yeah.
Whereas these are great. These are more designed for creators. For a long time, I was using the Audeze LCD1 as my kind of day-to-day editing, video calls type headphone.
Those are the little ones, right?
Yeah. And they're great because they're little, they're very light, they're quite comfortable. Oh, did you?
I hated them. So that was like one of my first, before I ever started a channel, I started really getting into headphones. And that was my first kind of like, ooh, I want Audeze. And so that was $400. I could buy it. I bought it. And I'm like, what is this? and after about 3 or 4 songs, it kind of like my brain kind of, I don't know, adapted to it. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. But then I take them off and put them back on. So I don't know if I just had my hearing was too pedestrian or my taste in headphones or what, but I sent them back.
It would depend on what you're using them for too, though. See, if you're using them for music listening, they're not a headphone I'd choose at all.
Okay. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, no, they're a headphone for me and I think Audeze intended them to be like a creator's style headphone. But I think a creator style headphone in most cases needs to be very listenable as well.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, they're absolutely brilliant for me as video calls, editing videos, watching back YouTube videos sometimes. But I think for me, that's kind of where it ends. I would never reach for them. If I'm going to put on a piece of music, I would always take those off and put something else on. Not because I hate them, but because they're not, for me, they're just not a music listening headphone. So yeah, that would make sense why you had that reaction to them. And that's why I'm liking these more, because they're not quite as lightweight and comfortable. They're not quite as compact, although I don't need to move them around, but they're a more balanced setup where at times I've literally flipped over to music and forgotten to change to a higher end headphone, not because these are as good as the higher end headphones, but they don't have any glaring tonality. I think the thing I find with the LCD ones that was probably why you didn't like them, they've got this kind of upper mid-range bit of emphasis, and they don't have a great deal of warmth down low to help balance that out.
Yeah, none.
And they lack a tone. They lack a natural tonality, I guess, is what it comes down to. Whereas these are really natural, but still pretty neutral for editing and mixing and stuff like that, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I hijacked. So
no, it's good. It's
less
good.
than $500. Your favorite headphones for music, for like listening to music.
Okay, for pure listening to music, my wall.
Look at you back there, all lit up with purple lighting.
Oh yeah, I know. Got to keep the branding going. I reckon it would probably be, and I've struggled with this because I don't operate always in US dollars, because a lot of the time it's what it's worth here in Australia. But
sure.
I'll go as close as I can to the right numbers. I think I would put a couple up there. I'll put 3. HD6XX to me is still an absolute winner. I think that's what you're wearing, yeah? Yep. I actually just picked up a pair for 2 reasons. One of them is I think they're just a reference point that everybody that's come into this hobby will probably have come into contact, or most people have come into contact with them, because they're just great at the price. So I've got a pair of those. I just looked at it. This is what happens at 6 a.m. in the morning. The Sundaras, the Huffman Sundaras, I think are an absolute winner. Yeah. And the Virum ones I still really like as well. I understand the controversy.
I was going to bring them up. Yeah.
I was going to
bring that up, because so we're pretty much right in alignment. It's the 6XX I really like. And then the Sundaras. I love the Virums. I like the 560S, Sennheiser 560S as well. But I was going to bring that up because I know when I put up my review of the Virums, I didn't know what was going on. I just started getting these comments, and it was right before I released the video. I had already had it edited. It was ready to go. And I heard about some controversy about it. And so I addressed it in the video, and I think you did too. So I guess my question is, do you feel like as a creator, you have a responsibility to pull a review if there's controversy, to just address it and leave it out there? Or I mean, what's your take on it? Because I know yours is still up, right? But I know other people's have taken theirs down.
So mine's still up there, and it was actually, I think, raised by some of my patrons brought it up to me early on when I said, hey, I've got the Virums in. I think that's where it came up. People said, oh, are you aware of the controversy? I'm like, what controversy? So went hunting for it, saw some of the stuff online, and my take on it, and I said this in the video, my take on it is that I don't feel like it's my job to censor anyone or anything. And that goes for comments too. And sadly, I had to put up a post recently apologizing for the fact that comments just get deleted by YouTube AI all the time. I see a notification, I go to answer it, and it's gone. And that to me is a shame, because in my opinion, everyone's got the right to choose what they want to talk about, think about, do, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to share the information, whether it's about Virum 1, whether it's about something else. I'm going to share the information. You can choose to do with it what you'd like to do. So I don't think it's for me to censor it and pull it. I think it's irresponsible if I don't at least say, hey, you might want to look into this before you buy it. But that's about as far as I think it goes, in my opinion, at least. I think sometimes we can separate the product from the person. I could have an issue with Axel Grell over at Sennheiser. Does that mean I should never buy an HD6XX? I should never buy an HD800? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Comments on the channel. There's lots of comments, and you'd get this too, I'm sure. Lots of comments that I don't necessarily agree with. Some of them are disrespectful. The most I'll ever do is say, hey, please don't be disrespectful. But it stays up there because it's their choice to say it. It's other people's choice to read it, respond to it if they want to. That's definitely my take. How do you look at it?
As far as the Virums or comments?
Both, actually. Let's see what both.
In essence, I mean, I looked into it. I'm not going to really give an opinion on it one way or the other. I did talk to Igor about it, because I did for a while pull down my review. And then I put it back up. I'm kind of aligned with you. If, first of all, is it accurate? I don't know. That's for the viewer to work out and work through. Secondly, as far as the viewers or the consumers, personal beliefs and whether or not they want to support something that they think or don't think. So ultimately it's up to them. But, I think if I don't review things, then I'm not doing my job, really. So I think at least folks should know that it's out there. But I loved them. I mean, I thought they were just fantastic, and I still do. It's one of my favorite headphones. As far as comments go, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
Because that's true here too, I guess, to a degree.
When I feel the need to respond, so if I feel defensive at all, that's when I need to stop. And I need to not write anything or say, thanks for watching. Appreciate your viewpoint. I've tried to get better at it. Sometimes I'm good. Sometimes I'm not so good. So it just, again, it depends on where I'm at. But if it's disrespectful, usually it gets taken out.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. I think I don't ever remove anything. I think generally YouTube probably gets to it before I do if it's that disrespectful that I would have removed it or consider removing it. But I definitely struggle with occasionally with the defensiveness. Like I want to go back and go, but I hold back from that because, like you said, that's the times I've got to go, hang on, deep breath. How can I say this in a way that I'm demonstrating the kind of respect that I want on this channel? I've started choosing just to not respond to some of those comments. It's like if it really riles me up and I think it's a really one-sided, unhelpful, single-minded approach. Like I've got no problem with people disagreeing with what I've said. I always respect that. But when someone comes on and says, you're an idiot, this product's rubbish, that's when I'm like, do I even bother responding? And these days, often I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to bother responding because this is one of those conversations that's just going to go nowhere.
No, you're not going to win it.
That's it. Exactly.
Do you think there is an ideal frequency response that every headphone should adhere to?
I'm so glad you asked that. Absolutely not.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly not. The challenge for me with that is there's more to a headphone than frequency response. So they've come out and their intention was not to say this is the one and only true thing. Their intention was to say, is there a general preference in the marketplace for a certain sound? And yeah, sure there is. But to me, we're robbing people of varied experiences if we only have one target curve for frequency response. And when I see reviewers map, they'll take a headphone, they'll map it against the Harman target and go, here's where it varies. This is your margin of error or your error range on this headphone. It's like, that's not an error. That's a conscious and deliberate intent by the designer to make something that sounds the way it does.
We hope so. Sometimes I don't know.
Sometimes
I think they're just putting something in there. It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll buy that driver, we'll buy that casing, we'll chuck them together. Yeah, that's very true, particularly, and I don't mean this to be focused on any
I know what you're going to
country,
say. Yeah, for sure.
But some of the Chinese manufacturers are literally doing that. They're going, we can buy this driver, we can buy this housing. In fact, I will put money on the fact. Attach the cable, so I'm not trying to handle that. These are the blonde B60. I haven't reviewed them yet. They're coming up soonish. Unlike the BL30, which I put out an emergency review to say, do not buy these ever, burn them. Other than the BL30 review, I very rarely would say bad things about headphones because I think there's a certain group of people that will appreciate every product. It might be a small group sometimes, but there's always merit. So the B60s here, without giving anything away, I like these. I think they're quite a nice headphone for the price. They're compact, they're lightweight. But
that headband, hold on.
Yeah.
The headband looks like the Sendy Iva.
Absolutely. It's the Sivka Sendy headband. The housings may be unique to Blonde, I'm not sure, but I would put huge amounts of money on the fact that there is a driver in here that is in other headphones as well. And I'll guarantee they've gone out and they've gone, we'll buy that, we'll stamp our name on it, we'll put this driver, we'll put this headphone, go to market. As it happens, it delivers a decent sound. So no problems there. So yeah, I think it's a good point. Sometimes the intent is not there to deliberately tune something, but other times I think it absolutely is. Like we were talking about the Poseidon. If everyone adhered to the Harman curve, we would never have the Zeus and never have the Poseidon. And I think they're both headphones.
Probably not the Meze Elite either.
Absolutely. In fact, pretty much all the Mezes except probably the Lyric has ventured into Harman territory a little bit to its detriment, I should say, before giving away too much about the review.
Listen to you.
Yeah. I really respect the Lyric, but I don't know when this video is going to come out compared to, I think my Lyric review drops on December 26th in Australia, so Christmas Day in North America. but it's a mixed bag review. They're really great on this hand and they're not so great on this hand.
Yeah, $2,000 is pricey too.
It is for what you're getting. I think it is, and I've compared them to some other stuff in that video that I think is better value for money because it sounds better at similar or lower pricing. Not sounds better is not the right term because there's not right and wrong. There is sound that I can see more people liking and being comfortable to listen to long extended periods at lower or same prices. And I think the VCs, the ZMF VCs, get a bit of a quick Guernsey thanks to a brief Patreon loan in that video, and they're just a whole nother level for just I think $500 more. It's like $2,500 I think for a set of
what was
VCs.
That one?
The ZMF Verite closed. Have you tried ZMF cans yet?
No, sorry.
ZMF.
I get messed up. I'm like, oh, ZMF. So yes. I have had the Aeolus. I
haven't tried those yet.
One of the viewers sent those in. I thought they were a bit too warm for me. So it didn't really resonate with me. I never did the review. It was his personal headphones. I didn't feel right about holding on to them. And at that point, I really didn't have a whole lot of experience with headphones from just outside of just like listening and knowing what I preferred. I mean, I think I've developed a little bit to where I can say, all right, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I don't think is right. So I think I'm getting there now. So I probably would have done a review if I had them now, but they're a bit warm for me. I mean, built beautifully, wonderfully, work of art. But that is a headphone that I do want to get on my ears. And
yeah, I don't always love the tuning, but I'm always impressed with something I often talk about in reviews. And this has come up with companies like AudioFly, which sadly is folded now, or is it in the process of, and that's public knowledge. That wasn't insider info. AudioFly did this really well. ZMF did this really well. They have very deliberate tunings. This kind of goes back to what we were saying before. They will tune a product to sound a certain way very consciously, very deliberately. And even though I don't always like the tunings, you can see that, okay, this was the intent and it's always really well executed. And so I really respect that about Zach, who's the designer over at ZMF and the owner. I've always really appreciated that about Zach's headphones is I don't necessarily go for all of them. Like the Atticus, I was a bit mixed on. I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I totally respect the tuning behind it. So yeah, I think ZMF, if you can get your hands on some more of them. I've just recently done the Auteur review that's out. That's a beautiful, beautiful headphone. That's one worth checking out. And the Verite Open and Verite Closed being their top tier Viridium driver ones, really, really nice as well.
Well, good. I think we're going off on too many bird walks
because
I one thing leads right into the next. But so I don't even know. Did you say over 500 or the ones?
No, I think we started talking about the US dollar thing and something went strange there. So yeah, so the higher end. All right, so I've got three.
All right.
And they're very different price points, all three of them, but they're all that higher end. So starting at the bottom, Headphone Aria, the new model. And I know that's a bit controversial because some people swear by the version 2. And that's, different tastes, different folks, different.
So they have 3 versions out there or just 2?
There's 2. There's 2 available. So there have been 3 in total.
Oh, okay.
So there was the Aria.
One of the Stealth.
Yeah. So the Aria came out. So it's called that V1. Then they did a revision of it, which became the V2. And I don't know what changed in the revision. I just know there was one. So most of the models up until recently were just the regular Aria, and it was the version 2. And then they went to the Stealth magnet version, which is what I'm calling the V3 here. And
that one's your favorite?
I love it. I think at $1,600, it's not unattainable. It's obviously expensive, but it's not like $5,000 unattainable sort of stuff. It's a headphone that I can see lots of people enjoying because it's not overly focused in any one frequency. It's pretty balanced, but it's got a bit of warmth and enough to make it sound natural. I just think I think it's brilliant. I think the V2 version was still a bit too aggressive in the treble. It might throw a slightly bigger soundstage, similar to like an HD800, HD800S, but the Aria V3 to me is better balanced and is going to work better with more systems and more genres and hopefully more tastes of individual tastes. So I think, yeah, the Aria is one I would recommend all day long. Alongside the Auteur, actually, I didn't think about that one, but I think I ended my Auteur review saying that if you want a fun, relaxing, deliberately colored, but not overly colored headphone, or you want something neutral, it's the Auteur for that bit of color and romance. It's the Aria for more neutral, but still musically enjoyable. Those would be my two favorites at 1600. And then it's the really big boys, which is the Elites behind me. Although I do still deeply, deeply regret selling my Empyreans. I couldn't hold them, and I when I say I regret, I would do it every single time to get the Elites, but I miss the Empyreans deeply. Just for they're so different and fun. So yeah, the Empyreans should be in that list too, but I'm going to stick with what I've got here: the Elites and the Susvaras as well.
Okay. Yeah. So you like Headphone, huh?
I do. I think what I'm actually finding is I like planar. I seem to be a planar guy.
Yeah. Have you played around with any of the Monolith headphones?
I had the M1060 version 2. The 1060s are fun in the sense that they give you a little bit of that early LCD2 sound, like the Audeze LCD2, that nice, rich, punchy, dynamic bass. So yeah, I don't mind the 1060s, but I haven't played any higher or any of the newer models at this stage. What about you?
Yeah. So I have the 570s, which I really like, but that was the same. I think it's Sendiiva driver. There's a blonde version of that.
Okay.
So I just bought that one because it's the cheapest. But sometimes you can get that for $200 or even less than $200. I love it. And I'm going to come back to a different point though. I've got the 1070s and then I've got the 1070Cs. So I like them all. What I don't like about them is the headband. So I have to like crank the headband because it kind of just sits on the top and then kind of comes down U-shaped. And so I've got to kind of crank them to get them to hug my head. But and I had the 1060s for a little while. I ended up selling them. But I like them. I think the 1070 Open has a vibe of the Elite. Now it's in no way, shape good or as good as the Elites. Okay, I'm saying they're good.
Yeah,
but they're not half as good as the Elites. They're not 25% as good as the Elites. But that overall kind of warm-ish sound signature, but still having some detail. It's a shadow or a kind of an impression of the Elite. And that was the only headphone that I have in the house that sounds a little bit like the Elite. But I like what they're doing. I see what they're doing. What they're doing is they're going for the sound. They're going for the look. They're not going for the comfort per se. Although, I take that back. Actually, I have these old ones too, M565s.
Oh yeah.
These actually were way more comfortable than their newer ones.
That's another Sendy. Is that another Sendy band? No, that's the Monolith band, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a Monolith band.
Yeah.
I did have to modify these because I took the pads off, and the pad. This is how much thought went into it. A significant portion of the driver was being covered up by the pad, and I was like, so I pulled that off, and it was a completely different headphone when I let the driver actually play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have a problem with Monolith. I get what they're doing. Sometimes I think it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think comfort wise, if they would just put a better strap on it, I mean, I think they could own the market as far as like
price.
the affordable stuff, but I don't mind them at all. All right, so you got the Susvaras, but those are like $6,000, right?
Yeah, it was a purchase. It was thankfully supported by Headphone, and they helped out on the price because it was going to be reviewed. Cool. So that was really good of them to do that for me, but it was one of those, do I do this? Can I justify it? And I thought, you know what? If I don't like them, I can always sell them and recoup most of that. So yeah, and I'm glad I did that. They're not a headphone I reach for regularly to listen to for music. I reach for them regularly when I'm doing reviews because they tell me everything that's going on coming from an amp or a DAC. But they're a headphone I selectively choose to listen to, and I pair them up. I've got a Elekit TU 8200R tube amp sitting behind me. That's a DIY. You can buy it pre-made, but it's also a DIY tube amp. So I built that and modified it fairly significantly. And that's my go-to Headphone and Susvara amp, because it just brings a bit of warmth and soul to the headphone, which can otherwise be, I find, a little bit lacking in soul. And I don't mean that as a knock against it. It's such a revealing, clear and transparent headphone that sometimes I just want to smooth it off a little bit and relax it a little bit.
Yeah.
But then other times I want to hear everything going on in a source chain or a recording, and I'll plug it direct into a solid state amp, and the veil is removed from anything else you've ever tried. It's crazy.
All right, so let's recap. 6XX, Virums, Sundaras. You got the Aria.
Yep.
Okay, Aria, and then Susvaras, and then what was the other one?
The Elites.
The Elites.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you, just thinking back, I think when I watched your review, you preferred the Alcantara pads on the Elites, didn't you?
Which ones were the? I like the soft ones,
the thicker fabric ones rather than the hybrid.
Yeah, the ones that were on it, I didn't like those as much as the other ones.
Okay, interesting. Have you gone back and tried it again ever since?
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't ask to suggest that you're wrong. I ask because the Elites I found were one of the few headphones I've tried where there was really obvious burn-in. I'm not a burn-in dude normally. Okay, go on.
That's a perfect, because I've listened to 2 different pairs of Elites at this point, and I thought I was going crazy. All right. So the ones I got that were sent from Meze, I felt were pretty warm with what I would call the leather pads or whatever. I put the other pads on, it brightened things up a bit or gives some more detail. The second pair that I tried were a new pair, and I put those on. I'm like, whoa, these are a lot different sounding. And over time, then it started sounding similar to the version I got from Meze, which of course, multiple people had listened to, and they had been burned in. So for sure, I saw the Meze's Elites change quite a bit.
Okay, it's good to hear that someone else felt the same.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I ended up doing is just kind of, I had the second pair for a longer period of time. So I just listened with I call them leather pads, and it finally started clicking with me. I'm like, okay. And that headphone for me is like, it's not about like, so oftentimes I'll have my wife listen to headphones, something that, or one of the kids, something that if I know they're going to hear things they've never heard in a song, I'll put it on their heads and I'll say, what do you think? I put the Elites on her head, and she's like, yeah, they're good. But she had listened to the Virums, and she had listened to the Sundaras, and she was like, whoa, blown away by the Virums and the Sundaras. But me, I'm spending time, I've got the Elites on, and what I noticed, it was just, so the detail and the retrieval and resolution's not in your face, but it's just layered.
Yeah.
Everything is separated in space, and it's like, it was a headphone that I just didn't want to take off. It was a headphone that a track would come on that I would normally skip over, and I just listened to it. I literally didn't want to stop listening to music. And for me, that was kind of a litmus test of, oh, okay, this is a good product. And I've had that on a few occasions. I like the Elites. They're really good.
Yeah, I think they're brilliant. I personally like them with that leather hybrid pad more, because I think you and I differ a little bit in the sense that I tend to prefer a slightly warmer sounding headphone than what it sounds like you do. So we're pretty aligned with me just tilting slightly warm, I think. Yeah,
I'm coming back though. So it just depends. And I think that's why having different sound signatures is so important, because when somebody asks me what's the best $1,000 speaker, I always tell them 2 $500 speakers that sound way different. And you put one up, you listen to it for a while, take it down, you put another one up. And I find the same thing with headphones. And I think Doug over at DMS just did a video about, you're doing yourself a disservice if you find your end game headphone, because your brain is going to adapt, and that's just going to be commonplace, the homeostatic nature of your headphone experience. But if you have something that's a little bit warmer, Yeah, put the Sundaras down, pick up something that's more laid back, and
Yep.
then you get to you start to get to enjoy that music all over again.
Yeah. I think that's a great
So
point. I haven't watched that video yet, but I think it's a really good point.
yeah, he's an awesome guy. I don't know if you've ever talked to him. He's
I
a good
haven't
guy.
actually. No, no. I think probably because of the US difference. It's hard, as in Australia, US, we're in different time zones and
Yeah,
different realities sometimes. So I think, yeah, trying to connect with some of the. I think early on, I reached out, and I can't remember who it was, but I reached out to a couple of the reviewers. And didn't get much back, but I was a teeny tiny channel, this dude from Australia, so it's not
yeah.
surprising at that point.
Well, yeah, I really enjoy it. Let's say how long have we been going?
45 or so.
All right, let's talk about amps and then DACs.
Cool, no worries.
What's your first of all, talk about Burson. I'm sure you're a Burson fan, right?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a Burson fan.
Okay. You paused there for a second.
I
Yeah,
did. I did. I was going to explain that. So,
amps. Let's do amps
yes,
and DACs.
Burson. You asked me about Burson. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Burson thing. The reason I hesitated there was I am a fan, but I wanted to make it really clear that I'm not. I don't favor them over and above any other brand just because they're based in Melbourne. I've had a few people in the past, and I don't say any of this defensively because I understand it. I've had a few people in the past question whether I was favoring AudioFly and companies like Burson because they're local to Australia. And I love the fact they're made here. I think it's cool that we've actually got some really top end brands that we did have before AudioFly died. I think it's cool that we've got a few brands here that are doing great things, but they've still got to make great products, or I'd be just disappointed. If they were making crappy products, I'd be going, gee, they're in Australia. What a shame they're not better. So Burson, I am a fan of what they do. I like the fact they're innovating. That's something I really love, is that they're doing things like they're putting a cooling fan and an amplifier to see how far can we push it if we put active cooling in there. And they're coming up with power supplies that are the supercharger power supply that you can buy for things like the Composer and the Soloist is unique in the sense they're saying, let's take a normal switch mode power supply, but push the operating frequency way higher to see if that improves the sound, and it does. So I love that they're doing that sort of stuff. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I just bought a couple of their op amps. So I'm excited to get those. I think I commented on your. That was another review that I really enjoyed of yours. Is kind of like an op amp shootout, and I really, really enjoyed that. And if anybody's not subscribed to Passion for Sound, I highly recommend it. You got a lot of content. How long have you been doing this? 3 years?
Couple of years. Probably, is it pushing 3 now? I'd have to check, and I won't take up time to check it. But it's probably, I started similar to you actually. I started around that October-ish time in the year, if I remember rightly. Maybe a tiny bit earlier in whatever year it was. I think it was probably 2019. I think so. I think it's 2 years and a bit at this point. I think. So I'm still relatively small as well. So I think because I'm a bit more niche, being just headphones, I think I'm just cracking 17,000 subscribers at the moment, and trying to push mostly to try to make it easier to get. When I write to companies to try to get gear, it's gradually helping that I can actually say, oh, I've got a channel with 15,000 subscribers or 16,000 subscribers, and they're more likely to go, oh yeah, we'll reply to your email. But so often I get crickets when I reach out to companies. I just get nothing back. And I think it's because the channel's still really small. So yeah, if anyone wants to subscribe, obviously I'm not asking for subscriptions for nothing. If you enjoy the content, obviously, if you're not interested in the content, that's fine. But no, I'd love any extra subscriptions to help, build that credibility with the suppliers that might go, oh, okay, this might be a real deal. We'll chat to him and see what we can organize.
I think you're doing an outstanding job. I enjoy it.
Thanks, man.
Amps DACs. Come on, let's do it. We can do it. Right. We can stick with it this time.
Show me the question. Is it open-ended, or do you want to hit price range?
Couple of price range. What do you think of Geshelli? Geshelli E2.
Love. Cannot speak highly enough about the E2. What you're using there right now, by any chance? Yeah. Brilliant.
E2. And then you probably see the other green one. That's the J2.
Yeah. Yep.
Right there. And that's really become my DAC of choice. Just fantastic.
Same setup. J2, E2.
Yeah. I see you got the t-shirt on too.
I do, yeah. And I sometimes will say on the channel, I'm not sponsored by any of these brands. If anyone sends me any branded gear, I will gladly wear it on the channel. Simple.
Yeah.
My wife won't let me wear it anywhere else, but I'll wear it on the channel. So,
Yeah.
I think the E2 for me, I liked the original Airish. I thought it was a good solid amp. The E2 is just miles ahead. Gino actually reached out to me when they were producing the E2. Well, actually, it was probably Sherry that reached out. She does most of the communications and said, hey, can we send you? It's a pre-production unit. We'd just love to hear some thoughts. And I had no impact or influence in the design of the amp. I want to make that really clear. But they were just interested to see if there were any glaring issues. So they sent it out and said, tell us what you hear. Tell us if there's stuff you don't like, blah, blah, blah. And I listened to it. I'm like, what have you done? Like, what have you changed to do this? I knew that from my interview, I did an interview. I don't know if you've seen it with Gino and Sherry, a 4-part interview
but I
series.
haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's a really cool interview because they're so down to earth. When I'm talking to them about the design, it doesn't get all technical and into the science of it. It's more just, oh yeah, we like to try different things and we play with this and play with that. And obviously Gino knows what he's doing. I'm not suggesting he's faffing around in a backyard.
No, I get it. He's more accessible. He's not he's not a
boffin.
What's a boffin?
Oh, boffins are like a technical geek, like somebody that would make no sense because all they can do is talk technical jargon.
I like that, boffin.
Yeah. It might be an English term that's carried into Australia. I'm not sure.
No, I dig it. I'm going to use it, boffin.
Yeah, so he's not like that. He's very down to earth, and so I know from that interview he'd been talking about the fact that we're going to try some different things. So I'm like, oh, he's clearly tried some different stuff. And he said basically the biggest change they made was changing the way the power supply is implemented. And yet the amps, it's like Airish is good. E2 is the bar to which every other amp at that price point that's not a discrete amp, and that's probably a separation worth making, but every other op-amp based amplifier at that price point should be aspiring to reach what the E2 can do. It's just nuts, in my opinion.
I love it. I obviously don't have as much experience as you do, but I just wish I could do single-ended out of it. And from what I understand, doing a adapter is probably not the wisest choice.
No, you may let the magic smoke out.
Yeah, just get an adapter.
Yeah, no, that's very important to keep the magic smoke inside electrical devices, and the adapters will let the magic smoke out.
But yeah, I got a big kick out of it. I mean, I have I've had a lot of stuff from the SMSL and topping and the Soncause.
Oh, yeah, people keep asking me about it.
Fantastic. It was like really good. I'm like, I didn't think, I had zero expectations. And again, I don't have a ton of experience with headphone amps. So the only thing I do is take a headphone amp that I know, put that there, take a headphone amp that I'm testing, and then I just go back and forth. And I was really amazed at the amount of soundstage imaging space that this thing could do.
I keep getting asked in comments about the Soncause and also the Sabaj, Sabaj.
I haven't listened to that one. No,
I haven't either yet. So they're two brands I do hope to get to, but I'm yet to find a way of getting my hands on it easily. But I will keep looking because I'm hearing very good things.
So what's your recommendation for, let's say, less than $150 single-ended amp for most people?
Less than 150 single-ended. It's probably the L30 from Topping still.
Okay.
I think that's really solid. It would have been, this breaks my heart, it would have been the IE Magni from Shit, which is just, I think this thing was absolutely incredible, and it's such a shame that I believe because of the color scheme it sold less than the Heresy, which I don't like particularly. It's not a bad amp, but I don't particularly like it. The IE Magni was just crazy, but I believe it's dead because of their Thunderdome situation where when they do these side-by-side products, the one that sells the most stays on, or they have to sell kind of the same and they both stay on, but the IE Magni didn't. So that would have been the recommendation. I don't particularly recommend the Heresy, and I'm yet to try the Magni 3 Plus. So putting that aside, I think it's probably still the L30 from Topping would be my sub $200. That might actually come in under 150. I do believe Shelly are releasing a new Arcall soon, and I think I think if I'm remembering it correctly, Sherry was going to send one out for me to try and put on the channel. So that'll happen. And I dare say if they've done similar things in that they've done in the E2, that will very quickly become my new go-to under 200.
Nice.
Assuming it's priced under 200, which I think it will be. So yeah, for now, let's stick with the L30.
All right, very good. All right, dongle DAC.
Option one would be, I happen to have these here from the recent Great Dongle Fondle, as I called it. It's not going to focus.
Feel weird when he said dongle
fondle. I know, it's wrong. Yeah, the number of outtakes I had trying to say dongle fondle was hilarious. I didn't have the time to put together a blooper reel, but it would have been quite a good one.
I just leave it in. I don't even care. Whatever.
Oh, the video would have gone for like 3 hours if I left them all in there. So yeah, the E1DA, E1DA being the brand 9038D on this one.
I watched your dongle fondle. What, EAD1, is that what it is?
Yeah, E1DA.
E1DA dongle.
And I've got here the 9038D. They've got lots of models, which makes it a bit confusing, but the 9038D is the most up-to-date single-ended version. And then I think he's got the 9038S, which is the double-ended, which is kind of, the balanced, which is kind of funny when you've got D for dual and S for single swapped, but I'm assuming it stands for something else. So yeah, that's great. For $99, this thing is crazy good. I've got a review coming up that I actually compare this to a desktop DAC, and my normal recommendation is if you can get something desktop, it'll almost always outperform a dongle. And admittedly, that's normally because the power is coming from a separate power supply. It's not coming through USB like it does for a dongle.
Right.
But I've got a USB powered DAC review coming up soon. So it's all USB powered. You don't have the option to plug in external power. And this thing kills it. Absolutely kills it. So yeah, the 9038D from E1DA, excellent. That's $99. The other one that I think is really great, and I do return to it regularly, what I was looking for, and I can't see it easily, was the Sparrow. The EMED Sparrow is fantastic. They've had all kinds of problems early on with electromagnetic interference, and you get like that jittery noise through, jitter's probably the wrong word, but that digital noise when it was near your phone and your phone was streaming, for instance.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of issues early on. Mine had it. Mine was a nightmare early on. EMEN ended up replacing it for me, and because they got new cables and stuff, and so they sent me out a new one. And I think based on my experiences with the new model they sent me, it's fixed now. So anyone that's buying it now will not have any problems if you're buying it new. If you're buying it secondhand, that's a different story. But buying it new now, I think the Sparrow's just nuts what they're doing with the sound out of that. Single-ended output from it's a bit average. I'd probably take the 9038D if you're only going single-ended. But if you've got predominantly balanced, the Sparrow's a killer. It's about, I think it's 200 for the Sparrow thereabouts. So you're sort of doubling the price of the 9038D, but you're getting significantly improved performance. So they'd be my two.
Cool. All right, what about desktop amps? And I don't want to keep you, or desktop DACs. I don't want to keep you too long here.
No, all good. I'm okay for, let's say, another sort of 10, 15 should be fine. If you're good with it, I'm good with it. At some point, the little guy next door is going to wake up, and that's going to make things difficult.
At some point, I don't know how many people are going to watch this thing for.
Yeah. By the time we edit it out, some of those bits, it'll be smaller. So okay, amplifiers. Let me give you what I might do to keep this one simple. Let me give you a few standouts at different price levels. Okay. I still think the Shit Asgard 3 is an absolute killer. It's a shame the price has gone up because of parts availability and costs and stuff like that, but it's still an amp I go back to and just enjoy thoroughly. It's very, compared to a truly neutral amp, it's quite a warm sounding solid state amp. But it's great, I think. Depth, layering, soundstage, really, really good. And that's where that whole discrete versus op amp thing seems to come into play, that the Asgard 3 being fully discrete gives you layering and depth that I haven't yet heard from an op amp design. So that one's great. I've got the Rebel amp here at the moment. The Rebel amp's great. Yeah, that's right.
Is it Revel as in
no, Rebel as in like Rebel Yell type Rebel. And it's great. I can't easily get to it to show you, but you can get it in this green anodized finish and it looks great. It's got a shit style design with the sort of folded metal case. It's just a schmick looking amp. they've done an interesting thing. They've got a hybrid design. It's an op amp in the input stage and a discrete output stage. So it's kind of a bit of a mixture of both, and it produces a really great sound. I won't try and give the full review here, but it's an amplifier I'd recommend. I think it sits at about $500 US.
A little Troil transformer in there.
Yeah, it's a schmick little amp. So very, 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 very good amp. I think it's great. Only just above that price-wise, the Singer SA1's really good if you're wanting balanced and still discrete. And then we're going up into the top tier of things like the Soloist 3XP from Burson I love. And then the really top tier stuff would be the Soloist GT from Burson once again, and the Sparkos Labs Aries are my two sort of top of the range. You're talking $3,000 odd worth of amplifier, but really great sound. They're both different, but they're both exceptional.
Same thing for DACs.
All right. And I'm just looking over my shoulder. One other amp I should mention, two other amps I should mention because they're A, budget, and B, excellent. The X-Duo MT604, the little tube hybrid.
I love that thing. I have a 602 and the 604.
Yep. I think they are just such good value. I had tried the 604 recently with a linear power supply. I'm doing a review of a linear power supply. So I plugged it into every possible product that I had that normally uses a switch mode power supply. And the transformation of the 604 is nuts. So if you get yourself to give it a chance to give it really good power from a
what
decent...
Is that, 12 volt? Is that a 12 volt?
Yeah, it must be 12 because the one I was using was a 5 to 12 volt selectable power output. So that must be 12. Whereas the 601, you can't because it's a 24 volt into the 601. But the 602 and the 604 are the same, but just doubled in the 604. So yeah, if you get a chance to give it a good quality linear power supply input, it's nuts. It's really, really cool sounding amplifier. It's good at any time, but with an even better power supply, if you've already got it, it's not worth spending the money on a power supply for it because then you're undoing the benefit of it being a budget amp. But if you've got it, awesome. So that, and also that I'm really impressed. I haven't reviewed it yet, but I'm playing around with the TA26, which is the X-Duo. It's like a dark voice equivalent. OTL amp. That's really, really nice as well. I'm enjoying what I'm hearing so far with things like the HT6XX or planar magnetics that don't worry about the output impedance. Really, really cool. So that'd be two other little throw-ins on the amp side.
Very cool.
But DACs, you asked me about DACs. I was really impressed with the topping E50.
Me too. I love the E50. I thought the E50 sounded like the D90, and the D90 was like $900 something. I'm like, this thing sounds just about as good. I'm like, I've turned a lot of people onto the E50.
The E50 is nuts for its price. And it's another one where you can easily give it better power using, because it's got the 5 volt USB lead that comes with it.
I got a i5 better switching power supply. It's like
perfect.
$50 or something like that.
Anything like that. Even running it, I've run it off a get out of the pile here. I run it off a power bank like that sometimes, just a phone charging power bank. And they're not guaranteed to be better because sometimes there's switching going on in there that you don't want. But a lot of people have them lying around. And if you just plug that in and fire it up, that's another step up in performance, whether it's a quality switch mode power supply, even just a phone charger will bring the E50 and other topping DACs like it up to a good level. So yeah, big fan of that one. Huge fan. I think the E50 is probably better than the J2. I like the J2 because of its inputs, outputs. It's a proper sized unit. I like all that, but I think the E50 is maybe a little bit better sound wise. I just don't like the fact that it uses those TRS plugs on the back because I have XLR cables everywhere. I don't have TRS cables everywhere because I'm not a pro setup. They're more of a pro plug. So yeah, that's probably my one drawback on the E50. What else would I go for? Going up from that, the SMSL DO200 that I just reviewed, really, really great. To me, it's actually better than the D90 or D90 SE actually that I've got here. So that's about $400, I think, US dollars. And yeah, I think the DO200 is a real winner. I think it's a great DAC for the price. I run hot and cold on SMSL and topping products because they release so much stuff that I get over the fatigue of new products from them. And also B, I find that some of them are really good and some of them are just, it's clearly pursuit of measurement, not pursuit of sound. When you listen to them, I just go, yeah, whatever. It's boring. It's lifeless. It might measure well, but I don't ever want to listen to it again. They never sound horrendous, but they just don't have the soul that some other products have.
Personality.
Yeah. So the SMSL DO200 I do think is one that I think is a winner. But from there, for me, it goes into things like Shit Bifrost 2 is just insane for the price. I love Shit's multi-bit DACs. I think they're brilliant. And then I'm a big fan of Chord DACs as well. So I've owned the Cutest and loved it. Obviously, the Hugo 2 uses the same technology as the Cutest, but in an all-in-one. And then the TT2, and particularly with the M scaler, I just adore as a DAC as well. And that's obviously sort of top tier stuff. The other one I'd recommend, having just reviewed it, is the Hollow May, which is getting buckets of hype. I think the hype on the May is the real deal. I think it's a great DAC. It stands kind of almost neck and neck with the TT2, which is a big achievement in my opinion.
Is it T2 by Chord?
Yeah, the TT2 is by Chord.
Okay.
So that's their top of the range all in one. Actually, no, it's not the top of the range all in one because the Dave has a headphone output. That's their the square shaped kind of
the Dave, the one that has kind of like the angled circular portal, something like out of a sci-fi movie.
That's it. Yeah. And the display on it looks like it's stuck in the 80s or something similar. Yeah, that's the one.
Dave.
I've never warmed to the Dave, both in terms of its price, like that. I don't question
like
that.
$10,000, isn't it?
Yeah. And I don't question there's probably a reason for that and quality in it, because I know when I went from the Cutest to the TT2, there's a big step up. I don't doubt that there's going to be something similar with Dave, but there's a point at which I go, that's a whole car in a DAC. I can't quite go there. The Spring, I think, is overhyped and not actually as good as other stuff that's a bit cheaper. And I've covered that off in the review, so I won't go to depth there. So,
any questions for me?
The only one I realized we never came back to your take on this was how you got started in the whole YouTube thing. You mentioned the origins of the channel before in terms of you wanted to put things out there and it was a bit of fun, but what got you into doing it with audio as opposed to maybe something else?
Well, I've always loved audio. I mean, I've always been a nut, even from when I was 6 years old. You know, I wanted the Sony Walkman. I wanted, as soon as I saw speakers, I wanted a speaker. So there's always been some weird obsession with me and it. As far as the channel, it's kind of a funny story. So my parents moved to Arizona to retire. I had a whole big box of stuff of mine. So they brought it here and it had all my toys growing up, like Star Wars figures, G.I. Joe, stuff like that, all these stuff. And so I was going to sell the whole box for like $100, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put these up one at a time on eBay. Lo and behold, and I was very fastidious. So I had all their little weapons and things like that. So I had all the original stuff. Some of that sold for like over $100 per figure.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. So I'm selling this and I'm like, I'm going to buy myself a really nice set of speakers and a really nice amp. So I sold all this stuff. I bought myself a pair of Kef LS50s and then a Moon by Sim Audio integrated amplifier. Bought them both used, but and they're even more expensive now, but that would equate to north of $4,000 US. And I listened to it and I'm like, what? And I had a home theater receiver in my bedroom, and I'm like A-Bing it. I'm like, yeah, this is better, but it's not that much better. And it really resonated and made me mad. It really made me mad because I'm watching all these videos, I'm watching all these reviews, and the overwhelming theme was, this is an entry-level speaker at $600. This is an entry-level amplifier at $1,000. And man, that rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a channel and we're gonna talk about affordable stuff. I'm gonna make fun of everybody. We're gonna talk about affordable stuff. And that was kind of the genesis of it. And I'm a bit obsessive. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put out a lot of videos and I'll know very quickly whether or not people like my take. And because if nobody watches, then I probably shouldn't be doing this. So I just put out a lot of videos and that was that's pretty much it.
Cool. I like it. And yeah, look where you are now. It's fantastic. The success you've had is brilliant and deserved as well. That's
Well,
good
I
content.
appreciate it, man. But it's not that I'm opposed to high-end audio. I'm really not.
Mm.
And in the irony of this is by making fun of high-end audio, I think more people are going to buy high-end audio because it's going to pull more people into the hobby.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of people are going to be like, okay, I'm fine with this $500 amp or $200 headphone. They may be fine. They may stop. I would argue that most of the people are going to be like you and I, and they're going to be like, ooh, what's next out there?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what is better and better and better. So my whole real goal is to introduce people to high value stuff, pull them into the hobby, make them understand that they don't have to spend $1,000 on headphones or on an amp or $2,000, or because there's some channels out there, and not as much anymore, that they'll just say, oh, that's garbage.
Yeah.
If it's not $5,000 or if not 1,000, it's just garbage. And
yeah,
I don't agree with it. It's just not true. There's a ton of really, really, really good affordable stuff. MT604.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that is, the MT602 is really good too. That's $100.
You think about if you were to buy yourself a pair of Sundaras and an MT602 or 604, and obviously that means a different cable. If you're buying the 604, you have to buy the cable, but do that, connect it up to an E50. You've got yourself a nuts level system for, well, we're not even hitting $1,000.
No, not even. So the Sundara's $350 US.
Yep.
M6, let's go 604 because that gives an option of going balanced later.
Yep. We have to go balanced with 604. There's no choice.
Right. So that's 180, I think. So let's just say 200. So you're at 550, and then the E50 is what, 250?
Something like that. Yeah.
So 550. So 7. So
800.
Yeah, under $1,000.
Yeah.
And the MT602, that's 100. So that would be at 550, or excuse me, 450. So about 600 you could get into it. Same setup with just the MT602.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good. You know,
it's
it was
a lot
interesting.
Of fun for not much money.
Last night I was watching a movie and I grabbed a pair of $35 IEMs, not because I just like the way they sound, and that was my choice over a bunch of other stuff. I thought that was interesting.
And it's funny you say that. One of the things I wanted to sort of say before we close this out was that on what you were just talking about, there is so much fun to be had at every level of audio that, you know, like I will go from reviewing a pair of Susvaras or Elites to, I've got on my desk here, this is the, it's going to come out all right, cables untangled or unwound. I can't remember I think it's the CCA, I can't remember if CCA is the brand or the model number, but it's the 24. I think it's the CCA 24 IEM here. Let's try and hold it up so you can see it. So little IEM, it's a 12 balanced armature per side IEM. These are a cheap IEM from China. These are so fun to listen to. They're rich, they're warm, but they've got detail. They're not super revealing or anything, but they're fun. And one of the things that continues to kind of amaze me and delight me is that even after listening to Susvaras and Elites and, you know, Chord Hugo TT2 and Hollow May, these really top end systems, I plug in a set of these and I go, gee, this is fun. This sounds great. I'm enjoying the music. And I think that's really cool that there are channels like yours that are bringing people in and making people aware of whatever the budget audio might be, because this is a gateway to either just enjoying it and never upgrading, or, and I say this, obviously it's any budget gear that we've been talking about. It's a gateway to enjoying your music and maybe going into more of the hobby. And I just think there's so much fun and joy to be had regardless of what you spend if you choose the right gear. And that to me is the key.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know if you have them in Australia, but we do here in America. It's called the DVD bin. So you go into like a Walmart or anything, there's a big box and there's just DVDs all over.
Yeah, we have a similar thing in our one of our electronics retailers.
You know, $3, $5 or whatever.
Yep.
So sometimes you really got to dig through that until you find, okay. And that's the same. That's been my experience with more affordable audio is, yes, you may have to kiss a few frogs before you get to that Prince, but there's definitely some standout products down here that are really just amazing for what it is.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate all of your time. And
no worries, Randy. It's been great.
And if you aren't subscribed to Passion for Sound, check out his channel. Subscribe if you want. It's got a ton of videos, a lot of comparisons, which are really helpful for a lot of folks getting into it. So I really appreciate it, Lachlan. And I don't know, you want to say anything?
Probably I'd just echo the same. If there happen to be any Passion for Sound subscribers that are watching this that haven't subscribed to your channel, I think there's good alignment, but also good difference between them. So yeah, if you're watching Passion for Sound and you happen to not be a subscriber of Randy over at Cheap Audio Man, then do go over and subscribe there. There's fun content, but also really informative and just down to earth, easy to consume, enjoyable content on some good products. So both I think are hopefully nicely aligned and good watches.
I don't really know how to close these things up. This is the only one. We're not doing a between two speakers, because with between two speakers, it would just.
I would have walked off by now.
Abruptly, exactly, exactly. So anyway, with that said, I hope everybody has a good week, and keep listening to your headphones or your speakers and enjoy the music.